Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Media. Bless you, Scott.
Yeah. Did I mute it? I tried to mute it.
You muted it. I just wanted to call you out. I am Josh Hayes here with Scott Moon and Chuck Manley. And welcome, everybody, in the live stream. Look, we have, I think, maybe a first in the history of KSM broadcasting.
Can't be the first.
Well, it definitely is for Keith Taylor, because somebody other than Corey Gillum and Rick Partlow had the first comment of the day. So Keith Taylor gets the Keystroke Medium Golf Clap of Appreciation. Thank you.
You got to get up pretty early in the morning for that.
I mean, you really do. You really, and it was quick, like just bam. So good morning, Keith. Let's see. Charlie Dunn's trucking through Florida today. Hello, welcome. Corey Gillum is here. He's been looking for the show for 20 minutes. YouTube tries to hide it. Well, actually, that wasn't YouTube. That was me. It took me forever to put the thing together today, so that's on me. It was late. I blame that on Scott. Scott McGlasson's here. Lucas Govel says Chuck Tingle interview and appreciation stream when? I don't know.
We definitely have to do that.
I mean, it sounds like a really intriguing show.
Yeah, we're just going to spend an episode reading Chuck Tingle titles and laughing our asses off.
It's kind of like the what was it, the read your best 1-star review thing we had going on for a while.
Fun. That was fun.
Yep.
We should do that again.
Of course, if you read enough Chuck Tingle titles, you probably get your channel shut down.
Guy Anthony DeMarco's here. Welcome. Good morning, everybody in the live stream. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. We're back on Monday today. If we do this next week, we'll see. I don't know. Just really keep you guys on your toes. Really, we can't let you just kind of get in a rut. You get complacent.
Exactly.
We just need to. It's like something that's very random.
It's like a marriage. Every once in a while, you just got to spice it up a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you get like whips and chains and stuff.
I'm not sure we want to go there, considering the conversation we had right before the start, where Josh was talking about trying something he wasn't sure he liked.
So I tried something. I'm not sure.
Most people get that out of the way in college, man.
Try anything once. So hey, Brandon Ellis is here. Welcome. It's 11 p.m. in Valley right now. But is it 11 a.m. tomorrow? So by the end of the show, Brandon will be in tomorrow.
He's coming to us from the future.
It'll be tomorrow by the end of the show for Brandon. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. So I did something I've never done before. I did a double roast coffee, which I'm not exactly sure if that's what it's called or not, but I think I did it incorrectly. And
it's a double brew, isn't it?
Double brew. Maybe it's a double brew.
Yeah, it's double brew.
I brewed a pot yesterday, and then it was my second pot of the day. Completely forgot about it. This morning, walked up. I've been telling my wife for a while, I want to try this. Like, you brew a cup of coffee, and then you pour it through, and you let it go again, and you try it. Well, I did that today. I can't say that I'm a fan. With a lot of creamer, it was okay. But then Chuck was like,
I like creamer. I like butter, too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not that brave. You do the what's that coffee called where you put butter in it?
Baby. Love that.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Butter, coconut oil, and a little bit of allulose. That's how I like it. When I do bulletproof. Yeah.
Man.
Yep. I did the bulletproof for a while, and I got coffee. You're making it complicated, yeah. But basically, it's a keto coffee type of thing. But when I've done it,
I started doing the butter thing when I was working nights in the Air Force back in the day. Who's freezing?
Really?
Yeah.
Who's frozen?
It must have been me.
We're all frozen.
Works great when you use a French press, Corey Gillum says.
Yes.
Says, I thought the past tense of brew was bruh.
Hey, bruh.
I double brud it.
Double bruh. You're a double brur.
Today, we're starting a new series where we're going to be taking some nonfiction work and learning about craft while we learn about craft. The first book we're doing is Creating... Yeah, right. Slightly educational, which is way different for us on the show. We're going
to be informative. What?
I know, it's crazy. And 6 seasons. This is the first time we're actually going to say something people are going to use in their everyday writing lives. The link for the book is in the live chat. It'll be in the show notes. Scott announced it on the group yesterday, so it's kind of late, but that's how we do things around here. Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Weiland. We're going to be discussing this book. Going through several chapters an episode for the next couple of shows, and talking about it, breaking it down, applying some of our own writing to what the book is saying, and just trying to teach once or learn for once in a while. You can click on that link and go pick it up. This episode is brought to you by Plottr, which I'm having a ball using. And It's a great tool. I'm going to use it in conjunction with Atticus once I get Atticus up and running, which I already have. I just need to.
That went live, didn't it?
It went live for the early signups. If you were signed up on their email list, you got an early.
I think I've got that actually.
Did somebody's coffee maker just go off? Because that was a very happy sound.
I don't have one in my office.
Mine beeped.
I'm not fancy like Josh.
Nice.
Well, I mean, that's true. So if you can pick up
Plottr and Atticus, you were saying
you can pick up Plottr. Yeah. So Atticus is out for the early release. They're still doing some things. I want to do a first open video, but Dave is saying that they're going to be changing and updating a lot of things over the next couple of weeks. So the video that I do today is going to be outdated tomorrow. So I'm just kind of giving it some time before I open it up. But I do want to do a first look video, and then I will do a series of videos on the program. And then my plan is, if it works correctly, is to use Plottr in conjunction with Atticus, and then we'll see how that works. If you want to pick up Plottr, you can pick it up on from this link. I think you get a 30-day trial, and then if you buy it, Keystroke gets a little bit of what is John saying? Josh, I'm not fancy like Josh picks up an ultra exclusive insulated coffee mug. I mean, that's true.
With my
I like Scott McGlasson's comment talking about
personalized
Atticus.
leather handle.
It's available for F-opters.
F-opters. My son says hello. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
So that's my spiel on the sponsors for today. Plottr and kind of Atticus, but not really.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do updates. What have I been doing? I have started kick back up work on Tranquility 2, and Devon and I are every day we're getting together on Skype and then working through the chapters together at the same time. We've managed to kick through 2 chapters already. This afternoon we'll be doing a couple of more chapters. I have an early it's not really a beta version, but it's an early version of the book you can get before it goes live on June 8th. I'm going to be putting that out in my newsletter and on my fan group page on Facebook. So if you'd like to get it the early in on Tranquility, if you're already signed up my newsletter, you'll probably get it this afternoon. If not, go to my website, joshhayes.com, and sign up for the newsletter, and you can get Tranquility Book 1 early. I just want to review, like a 7-star review on the 5-star system. If you could do that, money all day long. I am working through several chapters in Savage Stars, not Savage Stars. I did a lot of transcription last week. And now that it's not raining, I can go out and walk the neighborhood and do some transcription.
A lot of rain lately.
Man. So the boat season officially starts this coming weekend, and it's supposed to be raining. And yesterday I drove all the way out to Cheney to make sure that the docks were open, because in Wilson Lake up in Hayes, the lake's closed. Like, you can't get to the docks because there's so much water. Yeah. But Cheney's ready. Cheney's open. I could put the boat on the water. I'm excited for that. I am reading book 10 of the Gray Man series, which I'm plowing through, and I absolutely love them. And now I'm starting creating character arcs. So I got the audiobook yesterday and started listening to it, which is what we're going to talk about today. After Scott does his update and then Joe.
What update? When did we start this? When did we start this? It's crazy.
Scoot Monet. This is a new segment of the show.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of ridiculous French accent, if I could do one. Let's see. So I've been working really hard on the launch for Blue Sun Armada, which, holy crap, is like coming right up. It goes live on the 26th of this month, so a couple of days. That's pretty exciting.
Nice.
And work a little bit on book 2, trying to make sure I have good forward momentum on that series, but mostly spending a lot of time on Orphan Wars 3 and just really putting in the time for that, which would be good. Because I like, you get third books in a series are interesting. Every book is different, but it seems like third books can oftentimes be the hardest in a series that goes beyond 3. If anybody's ever done that, it gets silly. But usually, then kind of 4 or 5, you start kind of getting your stride back a little bit.
Well, because in a long running series, book 3 is you're trying to tie up some stuff from book 1 and 2, but then you've got to set up more stuff for 5 and 6 and all that 4, 5, and 6.
A lot of times in really longer series, you don't get rolling really until book 3 or 4. Like the Dresden Files, that story really starts rolling in book 3.
Yeah. Well, you learn so much more about the characters by the 3rd book that you didn't know in the beginning. And you know, that's sometimes you're like, I wish I had written the whole series at once, because look at all this stuff I'm learning about the characters. But it's a natural procession. Maybe we'll learn about something about character arcs. When writing a longer series, we'll do plot arcs, which I think are different a little bit than character arcs, and we can tie that into some of the stuff in this first chapter if I remember. Because I was really prepared for this. I read the chapter 3 times. I took notes. I was coming up with ideas and things, and then when we go to actually discuss it, I won't remember anything. I'll be like, yeah.
We read a book.
Over to you, Papa Chuck. Say something smart. I'm going to nod. And see what else. That's pretty much it. Lots of writing, trying to, get squared away at home. We've been looking at vehicles because I want to take the family on more trips. I always thought it'd be somebody who traveled more, because when I was a kid, we traveled a lot. And, but the vehicle we have is not very fun to travel in, not for very far anyway. And I looked at some and they're just grotesquely expensive. And so I'm kind of, we're kind of adjusting. The kids are just going to have to suffer in a tiny back seat for now, I guess. But we're planning a trip to Santa Fe. We're going to rent a Airbnb or something, whatever they call it something different. Haven't done that before, and see how that goes, and then maybe start kind of doing that all over the country and getting to just see lots of different stuff and explore things, So looking forward to that. Other than that, that's about it. And I've started in my spreadsheet logs. One of the things I've added some time ago and have been trying to keep track of is a certain amount of time every day spent studying craft, whether that's writing or practicing drills or doing podcasts, and a certain amount of time just reading fiction for enjoyment, because I don't do enough of those things because I'm so busy writing. And I've been sticking to the those goals, and that's kind of where we came into the Creating Character Arcs book, is because it's the second book that I've read since getting on this self-improvement kick, and enjoying it so far. Curious to see what you guys think. Chuck?
I'm here. So update. Yes. Almost there with Jack Dark Book 2.
So close.
So close. Got just the family stuff. My daughter's high school. She's going to be in the 8th grade, but she's trying out for the junior varsity and the high school team softball tomorrow, and that's a 3-day process I'll have to be around for. And my son actually got a job, and his first shift is tonight. So I've been helping him, just giving him tips and pointers on how to have a job. And because believe it or not, I know how to do that, even though I haven't had one in forever.
Don't tell the boss he's stupid.
Yeah, don't call the boss a bitch. That got me fired. That got me fired once back when I was his age.
You have to do it at least one time.
Well, yeah, to learn, right? It's a learning experience. But I'm listening. Let's see. I'm reading this book that we're going to talk about now because I was assigned homework yesterday.
That's right.
At the last possible minute.
At the last possible moment.
A short chance.
And I just started listening.
It's like your kid coming, like it's on Sunday, and your kid's like, I need 24 cookies for class tomorrow, and it's 8 o'clock at night.
I have a
can you make a unicorn costume?
Yeah. But I started listening to the 3rd of the superhero books that Steve wrote, the Raptors books. Those are just fun, like popcorn entertainment type things. They're good to listen to if you just kind of want to tune out for a bit. They're not too heavy, and I've really enjoyed them. I thought he did a pretty good job with them for what they are. Trying to get them books done and get them kids raised. So that's my update as usual. It's all the same. Every week it's the same.
I've been listening to Ruins of Earth by Christopher Hopper and Jane Chaney as my fiction. I didn't mention that earlier, but same thing. Enjoying that. Getting back.
You had your turn, Scott.
I know. I'm taking 2. There was a point.
My lines, man.
That's funny. I missed
Kids are
John's
so
comment.
mean.
Oh,
We're going to go
there it
to
is.
the crying session.
When you were talking
There
about
it is.
riding in the back seat, John says, I thought suffering in a tiny back seat was what made those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, and being carted around in a truck of a hatchback or the back of an estate. I remember driving across
Absolutely.
the nation in the back seat of an 88 Pontiac Bonneville, and we had a demarcation line across the middle of the back seat, and we couldn't cross it. And then, like, I had my own audio cassette tapes, and then most of the time was just spent looking out through the window. And now, like, what drives me nuts about long car rides now is now the kids have DVDs and movies, and like in the car, it's like built into the car, and like 15 minutes into the road, I'm good. Like, shut up. I did 8 hours with a coloring book and one crayon that broke 15 minutes into the trip.
Yeah.
And I peed in a bottle.
That's right.
Tell you what, kid, count all the telephone poles from here to Salina. Let me know when you're
I
done.
remember when I was young and we'd take a trip like that. The old man had I think it was a 65, 66 Impala, and it had a rear, the rear window. There was like a dashboard that was really big, you know, because it had a big trunk. It had a big trunk space. And like he would make one of us lay up there to go to sleep, and one of us lay down in the seat in the back.
Extremely safe. Totally safe.
They totally said no seat belt. I mean, I don't think the thing even had seat belts. I mean, it was that far back. But yeah. So whoever got up top, if you had to hit the brakes,
and you got warm, probably back
the guy on bottom would get. You know, my brother usually ended up, because he's a little bit smaller than me. He would end up in the window, and if they slowed down really fast, he'd roll out. And sometimes I think he rolled out on purpose just to land on
yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. I remember seeing a picture of like car seats from back in like the 40s and 50s or whatever, and it's just like a metal bar, and the kid's just sitting in it. I'm like, how is, I mean, you might as well just not put the kid in there.
Exactly.
Just tie him to the seat with a rubber band or something.
This is supposed to make sure they get cut in half. When you hit something.
That's it. That's the rib crusher right there.
The rib destroyer.
That is the sternum trauma device.
Oh,
Scott,
man.
you're not doing a very good job of keeping us on topic, man.
Oh, we got time.
Now we got plenty of time.
We got about 8 minutes of content, man. Come on.
We have 5 minutes of content. We've got to fill the rest of the show with, you know,
With
all of this we'll tie into later,
with
because
reminiscing.
we'll use this in our examples for the lie the character believes. You know, that we'll get to later in the thing. The lie the character believes that you have to have seatbelts or else you will die.
Such a
long
great
trip.
segue.
I know.
Yeah,
Make more sense if you've read the book or it was later in the show.
Who's read the book? And if you're here in the chat and you've
I
actually
think a lot of people have
read the book, or at least the chapters we mentioned.
Oh yeah,
Give a shout out.
What's an easy
We'll
way?
wait.
Just type one in the chat if you've read the book,
just
or if
something
you want to
simple.
participate in it.
I'm just curious.
I listened to the first 2 chapters last night on the way home, and then I read again this morning on my ebook. So we had a little bit of discussion before the show started, and the first chapter, "The Lie Your Character Believes," is talking about the arcs through your book, and Scott, you said something really profound that. It was Chuck talking about it. It could be the series,
it wasn't me.
and
It's
not
definitely Chuck.
the book. So as I'm reading this book, Bart says 0.5.
I really wanted to. Does that count?
Yeah. So as I'm reading this book, and I think as we go through, because we've got a couple of books we want to do in the coming months for the show. As I'm going through this book, I'm trying to apply it to the story that I'm working on now. So I'm applying these principles to developing Savage Stars, not Savage Stars. And the first chapter, "The Lie Your Character Believes," we're talking about arcs and the change arc specifically. And it says the change arc is all about the lie your character believes. His life may be horrible or his life may seem pretty great, but festering under the surface is the lie. And that they're talking about obviously conflict and what the story is going to be about.
Yep.
One of my things I had issues with this chapter is trying to figure out what the lie was. And Scott, you said something really interesting about that. But then Chuck, you also said it doesn't necessarily have to be applied to just one book. It could be applied overall to the series. if you're writing a series. And Scott, you said something that
there's a couple of things. So as we're going through there, because what you immediately changed my whole thought about this as soon as we started talking about. Thanks a lot. All this preparation now
You're
is right
welcome.
out the window. Good job. Appreciate that.
Happy to help.
But so I think there's a couple of things. Like first of all, in the intro or the preface or whatever, it talks about the fact that plot and character are integral to each other, and that your character arc kind of drives your plot and vice versa and things. So those are important. What your character wants versus what your character needs comes in later chapters. But this chapter, the lie your character believes, what I get the feeling of is in lots of cases, it's very subtle. It's not a huge thing that's like dominates the story in the beginning.
Right.
So the lie your character believes might just be the status quo. Like, I'm a detective and I'm going to continue to be a detective just like I always have been, but then they get an unusual case and then everything changes. Or it can be, a lot of the examples I gave in the book involve things like what's Lightning McQueen from the movie Cars. They use that example a lot. He believes that life is a one-man show.
Yeah.
And so then obviously he's going to learn to work with others. So those are pretty obvious versions of that as well. But so I think the biggest thing that came up with in the pre-show is that we're not necessarily looking for it to be like the only metric that you're designing your story with. Right. It's important, but I think it's kind of foundational.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Chuck.
I was going to say, it also kind of depends on the type of arc that your character is going to have. I mean, flat arc characters, they don't necessarily have a lie, but their attitudes and stuff and how they react within the plot is what is the catalyst for other characters to change their actions or their beliefs or whatever. Yep. So, that's going to be there's not really a lot of theme there. But if you're going through some big emotional change, either for positive or negative, it's going to be a little more in depth, a little more richer story there, I think.
I think that's a good point. So the three arcs they talk about in this book are the positive change arc. That's chapter 1 we're in. The flat arc, which I actually really enjoy, and the negative change arc. So one of the things, Josh, when you were telling me that you were struggling to figure out what the lie was your character believed, I was wondering if maybe your character is more of a flat arc type of character. If he already knows who he is, he already has strong moral convictions.
But then the question becomes, are those convictions the lie?
Could be.
Like we were discussing with Josh that, maybe the lie he's telling himself is the system has my best interest at heart, so I'm going to serve the system. And by the end of that, he figures out, no, the system doesn't give a shit about me. They'll throw me to the wolves the second it's convenient for them.
Right.
That could be the whole arc. And that's actually shows up a lot in action adventure type stuff. And the flat arc type characters, they're also very popular, I think, in more action oriented type stories, simply because those characters, people who want to read action adventure, they're more interested in how the character affects the problems within the setting than they are about their emotional, makeup or whatever. Yeah. So, that's why things like James Bond and Batman and, all these well-established characters that have been around for decades, they're all flat arc characters for the most part, because it's more about them changing the world than the world changing them.
It's interesting because I think it was Scott was telling me that the Gladiator, his character is actually a flat arc.
It's a flat arc.
Which I had never thought about in that, because he doesn't have a change. He remains the same from the beginning to the end. And so it's interesting because
there's a whole bunch that are flat. Gladiator's a flat arc. Die Hard's a flat arc. Forrest Gump's a flat arc. There's this a newer one they use in this other bloggers called Paddington Bear is a flat arc, one where he's always happy and he just kind of has all this really good, people all kind of become happier around him and has all this positive change, but he's the same all the way through, which anyway, go ahead.
No, I was just going to, so I'm trying to think of the positive arc examples and the examples they have in here, like Thor, is the lie. Might makes right. But what's interesting about that is, and I'm basing this off the NCU characters because I haven't read the comics, but in his case, that's actually correct.
Yeah.
Because Thor, he's powerful and he uses his massive power to beat the foes. So I'm trying to break down this lie part of the positive arc, and I was having troubles putting that together because Thor's lie is actually correct. He is extremely strong, and that's what helps him solve the problem.
Yeah,
but he needs
that
other
doesn't
people.
make him morally correct. I think that's what might makes right means. That means if you can do it, you have the right to do it. So if you can kick, destroy a city and rule the survivors, and you're able to do that, then you have the utter moral and ethical right to do so. And that's where, because if you watch the first Thor movie, he's very cocky, very, just full of himself, and he thinks that just because he's strong and has power that he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, and that people will love him for it.
Right. He thinks that's all that matters, and then obviously it changes. I think a simpler example of of a positive arc change really is A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah.
He starts out thinking that money equals worth, and then he learns that maybe not.
Compassion equals worth.
Money, exactly. So that's an example, I think, of a real positive shift in a character.
Mayonnaise 85 has a good point here on Thor's lie. He's egotistical and doesn't care about others' welfare. Truth in the end sacrifices himself to save others.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, he learns that service is more important than just being the toughest guy in the room.
It's funny because I was trying to figure out how to read his handle there, and Mayonnaise 85. That's not how I was pronouncing it. So I'm glad that you came up with that.
How are you pronouncing it?
I have no idea. I was like, we have a lot of really creative. We have a lot of really creative, handles in here. So, but there's been a bunch of comments in the chat. We might need to mine some of those out because it looks like most everybody who's here has read it or is familiar, except for Rick, because he says he's read it. He put a 0 in there.
Well, somebody put a -2, which I think means they bought it, looked at it, decided they hated it, and returned it. That's the only thing I can come up without ever actually reading it.
Right.
Yeah, it was Guy. He put -2. So he was like, I'm going to get this. He looked at the cover. Screw this piece of crap.
I'm fundamentally standing. Yeah, this is antithesis to everything that I stand for in writing. No, but then somebody, who is it? Somebody in here had said, I'm losing track of all the comments because there's so many, had said that they read it a couple of times a year.
That's not a bad policy. I like how it's written. It's very straightforward. Not a lot of fluff there. That's a good way to do that.
I've been reading a lot of Larry Brooks books over the years, and one of the things I have a problem with is that a lot of the book is selling his idea as being the way to write.
Exactly.
And I get so exhausted, and the book could be about a third.
The same way. I love the writing advice in the Solstein books, but a lot of those, there's a lot of his ego in those books too.
It's like a thesis paper. Like you have to convince the board that you're right. Right. Which I don't really care.
What about a negative arc? The first one that pops into my mind is Anakin Skywalker.
No, yeah.
He starts out idealistic and wanting to, just wanted to save people and yada 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 and be a good Jedi, and then he ends up as Darth Vader and the mass murdering fascist person. So that's an example of a negative story.
Definite negative arc.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get to that chapter or that part yet, but speaking on the chapter 2, the thing your character wants versus what they need, as I always think it's interesting when because some of these things you can't apply to genre fiction the way you can to just general fiction, I guess in this case you can apply wants versus need because everybody has that.
Right.
But
I think,
sometimes,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no.
Go ahead. Well,
I
I
was
was
just
going to say, in genre, the rules are definitely different than in quote unquote serious literature. You know, genre
yeah,
is more about entertainment. You know, and the highs and lows that come with good entertainment. Whereas serious literature is more in its purest form, I think, is more of a an examination of the human condition. So it's all very,
Absolutely.
very in-depth emotional reactions, and it's a lot more about you. I don't think you can have highbrow literature without a hard character arc. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Eh,
Really,
well, because
deep
that's what they're
feeling
looking
stuff.
for.
Exactly. And
Yep.
which to me tells me that that's kind of a genre unto itself. You know,
For
in
sure.
my opinion, all fiction is some kind of genre fiction, and highbrow literature that's just as true as it is for science fiction or fantasy
sure.
or whatever.
Well, I guess one of my things that I was reading for is maybe I just took it a little too deep, because thinking like, like I write entertainment fiction for the most part, and not
Right.
like you're saying highbrow fiction. So taking the lie part of positive arc, and trying to apply it to the book that I was writing. Well, at first it doesn't work because I'm almost positive my character has a flat arc for
Sure.
his character.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be able to apply the lie. But also, even if you did, being entertainment fiction, it's not, it doesn't have to be so deep that you're like having some type of intellectual like light bulb that goes off,
Yep.
trying to figure it out.
It's not, it has its place in the story. So I think one of the ways you could look at this type of its character arcs or these types of character development issues is kind of like world building. It's like knowing the lie your character believes. It might not necessarily go into every chapter or really be written about that much, but I think you might have a stronger story if you know it. So you have it developed, but it doesn't really go into the story as much as it would say in a different type of fiction. I think that's where it would be the most useful.
Yeah.
I think it gives you that depth of character. It's kind of like you don't have to tell their entire backstory in detail, but you should maybe know it.
I listened to a video with John Truby over the weekend, and talking about story elements. And one of the interesting things that he said was, one of the questions was, what are your thoughts on writing as rewriting? And he said, I really think that people take that too literal, because I believe you can do all the rewriting before you even start writing the book.
Agreed.
Or the script. And what he meant by that, and this doesn't really help pantsers, but actually it can if you're just generating ideas. If you work out those issues beforehand before you start writing the book, then you're rewriting. But by the time you start to write the draft, you can write the draft, and then you don't have to toss out 90% of it because you found a problem. But now, like what you're saying about figuring out this lie beforehand, it does help to build the story, because then you can adjust different story elements ahead of time and know, like, this is where I want to go. So I need to see these landmarks that I need to adjust in the story.
Yep. And you might bring something out in your character and your story later in that you hadn't really expected. That just kind of comes to fruition because of the seeds you planted.
Right.
Like you were talking about a show the other day that has a really long game. So there's things about the characters or some of their wants and needs that don't necessarily come out in like the first chapter or the first episode or whatever, however you're doing that. There was a couple more comments up here that I saw. Negative
You should
art.
be able to click them out. Can you not? If you're not looking on StreamYard, you might not be able to click them out.
I don't really. Yeah, I don't know. I'm on the YouTube one. Says Kit Yen says negative arc. Many bad guy origin stories are negative arcs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The Joker's an
100%.
example. Yep. And maybe that's why people really like those. A lot of people like the villains as much as the protagonists, because they got their own struggles.
Lou had a good point about author guides. He said, I hate the books that they try to sell you on the system of how great it is, before they actually tell you, like 90% sales pitch, 10% useful content.
Yeah, and sadly, that's a lot of the indie written writing books fall into that category. In my experience, anyway.
I think a lot of the traditional ones too, because I think they have to pitch it to an agent, because like the Larry Brooks books, they're great, or another one, Stephen James. He has one I really like. It's kind of the opposite. It's story trump structure, and it's basically how you should be a panster. It's the only sensible way to go, which is a whole different book. I'd be curious what you guys think of it. But they spend a lot of time, and because it reads like a pitch. Like here's the problem I'm going to solve. Here's how I'm going to solve it. Here's the solution. Here's my wrap up. It's like a four-part structure.
The $9.99 workbook to help you do it.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, it's cool. It's funny because when you're talking about story trumps structure, it's interesting because in that same interview I was listening to Truby about, he said that the 3-act structure is a lie in and of itself, and he doesn't believe it at all. And so it's funny because
I kind of am down with that. I'll be honest with you.
Well, it's just funny because
so many ways to mold it and shift it around that you can't state it like an absolute. I mean, it's just not.
But you can't.
I think that goes for everything. Everything you can teach about writing, I think, is ethereal. Like nothing in teaching writing is in concrete. Like you must do this.
Right. There are no absolute. The only rule is if you want to write, you got to sit down and fucking write.
True.
Don't be boring. What's the other one?
That is the only rule.
Don't be boring.
Rule. Well, you can still write and be boring. You're just not going to sell it.
Well, it's like true. And if you break the 3-act structure, I mean, you can't have. It would be difficult to write a book where, like, if you wrote what's the Marvel big finale? I forget it.
Endgame.
Endgame. If you wrote Endgame and they had the first battle in the first scene, and then the rest of it was explaining how they got to there, then it would kind of suck, and you probably wouldn't it'd be a dumb story. It would not be satisfying.
One of the things I was thinking about when I'm looking at the thing that your character needs as a plot point is thinking of that in terms of overall needs, like per story or per series, but then also per chapter. And a lot of these things I think you can take and break down smaller bits and say, what does the character need in this chapter, and then put in conflict points just in the chapter dealing with that specific problem. And one of the things I've been trying to do with my books over the last couple of years is create massive amounts of conflict, and that is something that I think a lot of authors go through the easy button of, we can do this, but let's solve it easy and move on.
So here's the question: is that external or internal conflict? Because we have an internal problem. You only have room for one in a book. You don't have room to have lots and lots and lots of personal internal problems. But external problems, you're absolutely right. You can never go the easy route.
Yeah,
but
you can have both. You just have to work on each differently, I think.
I think the best way to do it is depending on the kind of book you're writing. Like, let's say you're writing the kind of stuff we all like to write, the action adventure-y, the external plot, the hero versus the problem/world is going to be more the main plot, whereas his internal struggles with loyalty to his government agency or whatever, that's going to be more of a subplot. That's the thing you're going to bring in, like in the Marshy Middle and things like that, to kind of keep, how's he going to figure this out? When did he realize that his handler was a piece of shit? Whatever. But if you're writing something more cerebral, you reverse those two roles, And cerebral, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking
I can't stand book snobs. I cannot stand them. I just can't. Sorry. Go ahead. Press on.
Can't do it. Go ahead, Chuck. Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that what we're talking about a lot in this book is kind of more what's under the hood, and it's not necessarily something you have to write about in every scene, but you should know it. Like, you should know if your character gets faced with this dilemma, how are they likely to react? And you will know how they react because you know what their lie is and whether or not they've figured it out or not. You don't have to talk about what their lie is, but you'll like you watch Die Hard, you know what John McClane's going to do because you know his how he frames the world, how he thinks about the world, what he thinks is right or wrong and how he's going to act, but you don't really talk about it. You don't sit there. He doesn't have long diatribes where he says, well, you know what, if I saw a guy that did this, I would react in this way because I'm a strong alpha male. No, it's just it's under the hood.
Right. And we always talk about in world building and stuff, we talk about the whole iceberg theory where the reader sees this much, but we know this much. Well, I think the same thing applies to character, because whenever I decide, especially a protagonist, I always know, I try to create as much of her personality in my head as I can, and things that never come into the book. Like I know their first job, and I know their secret fantasies and their whatever. None of that ever really shows up in the story, but anytime I find them in a conflict situation, it will all inform me how he would react.
How they would react to twice roasted coffee or whatever.
Exactly. They would know not to let the pot sit for 24 hours before you double brew it.
Yeah.
You need to do that immediately.
Oh, what rookie would make that mistake?
Oh, we really should put our pre-show on the internet.
Yeah, throw it up on Patreon. That can be
exactly. Kit says that internal and external conflict should be connected according to Truby. Hero can't fix external conflict until he fixes internal conflict first. His lie stops him from succeeding. I partly agree with that, but I also partly disagree because there could be some externals that are easy
to him to acknowledge that
There's
lie.
A lot of things you can fake it till you make it.
Well,
and it depends.
If an external conflict is having a fight with somebody, he can pass that external conflict without dealing with something internally. He can deal with that after the fact. I think they should be connected in a throughout the story, the way you present them.
It's going to depend on how high you are on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like your basic survival things are more likely to be able to be handled regardless of internal conflict. But when you get to like the very top of the pyramid with self-actualization and becoming your true self, then that's probably correct.
Yeah, and a lot of times the external conflict will trigger internal conflicts. In the case of 100%. The thing I was just describing, like the guy's not sure if he should be loyal to the agency, and then his handler pulls out a strap and tries to shoot him with it. Okay, well, that's going to cause some conflict within him,
Right.
I mean,
right.
So it's, I can see his point, but at the same time, I think it can go the other way just as easily, depending again on the genre and the type of story you're trying to tell.
One of the cool things that I've noticed, or that I've learned in the Gray Man series, and I'm going to try not to spoil it because it's interesting, that he used to work for the CIA, and then the CIA put out a kill order on him and tried to kill him. And for, I think 5 books, he doesn't know why. He has no idea why the CIA is trying to kill him.
Burn notice.
Right. Because they tell him all the time, you killed the wrong guy. And he's like, no, I didn't. And there's this buildup. And then finally, I think it's in book 5, you have the breakdown and you learn everything that happened. And it was one of the coolest internal twists that happens with the character over the series, I thought, because that was one of the big things that he had to deal with. And it was an external conflict, right? Like the CIA was trying to kill him. And then when he learns everything that he learns, it morphs kind of into an internal conflict. And then he has to deal with the ramifications of everything that happened and still press on with the ongoing mission that he was already on. And I thought that it was very well orchestrated, taking that external conflict and morphing it into an internal conflict with the character. And I don't know that I'm sure it's been done, and I'm sure I've read it before, but this is the first time that I actually paid attention to it and saw it happen.
Right.
Yeah. Well, his lie might be the CIA is trying to kill me because of this, and he just believes the wrong thing. I mean, if you're trying to shoehorn it into this character arc book's paradigm.
Well, and then Corey Gillum says he or she can try to fix external conflicts without fixing internal ones, but it tends to make the situation worse. And sometimes I think that's actually a mark of better writing than fixing it and fixing the conflict in and of itself. If you try to fix it and fail, it's the try-fail cycle, right? Where you're trying to fix it and you fail. That makes the book better sometimes because it ups the ante and ramps up the conflict in the story.
That's going to fit structurally into probably, if you're doing a four-part Larry Brooks type thing where you have the middle is actually 50%, and you have part 1, part 2 is the second 25% or second quartile, then part 3, that type of thing where they are reacting but reacting wrong and everything gets worse, fits very neatly into the story structure. Right. Where they're making these mistakes and it's just getting deeper into, like if they believed you have to go it alone and they just keep trying to do it alone, and pretty soon they're horribly outnumbered and so on and so forth. Then maybe in the third part, they find a mentor or a true ally or something that corrects that lie in some ways and allows them to move forward. It's a theory.
I think that I think these conversations and this the way that we're breaking this book down are great, because just reading the information in and of itself, I think is sometimes it doesn't process correctly, but then like working through these topics and issues on the show and then with everybody in the chat, I think is going to help. I'm always trying to learn, and like Scott said, you're trying to work on your craft and work on it more, and that's what I've been trying to focus on this year, is learning new things. And I love trying to work this stuff out instead of just reading the book and going, okay, I think I learned something. This way we can hammer it home and actually figure stuff out.
Sure.
The first thing you said to me in the pre-show changed my whole experience with the book. And then with Chuck's comments and then everything in the live chat, I wish that people that were listening to the show could see all of the discussion that's going on in the live chat, because there's so many things that we haven't hit on and people have articulated things in unique and powerful ways. But there's a lot of good stuff. I think discussion is a better way to glean the information out of these craft books.
I was looking through some of the examples, and one of the examples that says the character, when they're talking about the character's needs in the book, that really kind of like turned a light bulb on my head, is the Jurassic things your characters need might be too in the Jurassic Park is protect the living future over the dead past. And if that's not a killer tagline for that book, like,
it sums it up perfectly, because that's the choice the guy has to make,
Right. Well, it's also the thing that Ian Malcolm talks about all the time throughout his warnings of we probably shouldn't do this. Yeah. And so you take like that line and then you develop a whole character almost around that specific it's not an emotion, but it's an idea of what you're doing is wrong, but you create an entire character to work on that. I think that's interesting. Yeah. Is finding something, the lie or the need or the want, and then developing a secondary character around that to push it towards to push the story forward in that direction. And I don't know that I've ever done that in any of my writing. I mean, you have an antagonist and protagonist, but to have a secondary character push an idea, that I think that's an interesting way to go too.
It's an interesting tie-in between character and plot,
right?
Character and structure,
because that turns the character into plot almost.
Yep. There. Well, in the preface for this book, there's a section I didn't write it down or I can't quote it, but it basically talked about, I can't remember which, it might have been Robert McGee, who'd said that character is plot and plot is character. And I think you have to dig into that to really get all the nuance out of that. That could mean different things, but I do agree that you can't separate them. And a lot of people think it's one or the other, but it's not.
I like this quote from, you were too busy asking yourself if you can do this when you should have been asking, should we do this? And I think that's a really good quote because that can be applied to a lot of things, not just bringing dinosaurs back from extinction.
I can think of a number of times in my life I should have asked myself that question.
Kind of like 80, like the last 5 years of this podcast. No, I'm kidding. I also like Walt's comment. Throw that up there.
Tacos always help with internal conflict.
Absolutely.
I don't know that the internal conflict from tacos becomes really quickly an external conflict. and
that's what you put on your taco.
It's like going to a Long John Silver's. My internal conflict is it's really good to have every couple of months, and I'm like, I need a hush puppy, and then it quickly becomes an external conflict, telling myself I should never do this again.
I should never do. Yep, I hear you, man.
Well, I think in the next couple of episodes we'll break down a little bit more. I'm really interested when we get to the flat arc part of this book to see how it applies to Savage Stars, Not Savage Stars, and my character there, because I really enjoy like you're saying, like the thriller books where there is a flat arc character.
Yeah.
That's for me. It's been some of the most enjoyable movies and stories I've watched. But then when you have I almost kind of prefer negative arcs where something happens that you didn't see coming and you're like, oh, like
yeah.
I like the character arc change, and I've always, even before when I was a kid, I hate the long setup where the characters, weak and ineffectual and cowardly and dishonest. And I'm like, and I always hated that part of the story. And then I realized after I learned the idea of flat arc, why I like things like Die Hard and Gladiator and some of those is because they have a strong moral code to begin with.
Right.
And it gets right to it. And then they have a character arc change, but they start at a little higher level. It's kind of like my other frustration is when you have somebody who, can't keep a job at Blockbuster Video, but by the end of the movie, they can defeat the Decepticons. So I'm like, I'm not really sure that's realistic. I can't make the leap from completely ineffectual to savior of the universe in one movie.
Yeah, sometimes positive arcs kind of go way out there.
They take that everyman hero thing a little too far.
Right, exactly.
I did something with my Paragons trilogy that I found to be kind of fun. I had two protagonists, two main characters in that, Israel and Aaron. And Israel starts off the whole trilogy is like this middle class, well-educated, kind of idealistic, just your typical guy, professional guy. Aaron is wrong side of the tracks, abused, doesn't trust anybody, curses like a sailor on leave, just two polar opposite people. And by the end of the third book, she's kind of like the den mother, and he has become, and he's not as bad as her, but he definitely is a lot darker, a lot less trusting, and that sort of thing. So I always, whenever I read something and you kind of see these two opposing character arcs working together, I always thought that was kind of fun to do.
That's a good, definitely good.
One of the interesting, I just thought of this, and maybe it's just because I'm dumb, but I was trying to apply the positive character arc to my story. But one of the things I just thought about is you have multiple characters in your books. You can have multiple character arcs in your books and play with the different arcs. You don't have to have one in a single book. You can have
how they weave into each other. Yeah.
And how maybe a flat arc character would affect a negative arc or a positive arc character and making those interconnections through your book. I had never thought about it that way until just now.
Absolutely. And really good supporting characters make a difference too. Like you were talking about with Ian Malcolm in the Jurassic Park. That's, to me, that is the mark of a really effective supporting character, is when they do and say these things off to the side that really affect your protagonist. That make them stop and go, oh shit, yeah, maybe he's right.
Well, then you have like in Gladiator, you have a flat art character in Gladiator, but then in the what's the guy's name that gives him his armor?
I can't remember names.
The he was a gladiator, but then he won his freedom, and that gladiator made a positive arc change. That character in Gladiator made a positive arc change, and he was affected by the flat art character, and that's something I'd never looked at either. Like how the different character arcs for the character could affect or will affect different characters and their arcs in the story.
And then the flat arc, like I said, is if you want that to be an effective character, he needs to be a catalyst for change within the setting. He's going to kick off missions and attitudes for the surrounding characters.
Yeah,
that's kind of what a flat arc does.
And a lot of times that's
I'm going to interrupt you again.
No. I was trying to interrupt you. I'm trying to break in. I'm always trying to break in. I'm going to say that a lot of times you have those side characters that you almost love more than the main character, and they need a change. They need help. They need something to do different. And what's so satisfying is seeing them get that help, and they get it by Superman, who's obviously an extremely flat art character. I mean, you can't really get any flatter art than like the most powerful superhero.
Well, it's like what you just said. The character is plot and plot is character, but if you look at how the actions of the arcs of different characters affect those other characters, then it does become plot, because it does start to affect different things and build that relationship in the story as you're writing it. Man, see, this is why I love having
drives the story. Yeah.
I just learned two things that I had not ever thought about in that context in I don't know how long since I've started writing. I mean, maybe it's something
we're going to do something useful here.
Maybe I'll learn something. But it's interesting. It's crazy, right? Like you may do these things by accident, but now like actually thinking about them, I can go and look and like do it on purpose and know what I'm talking about. It was like something John Truby said in his interview that I listened to is a lot of people will watch a movie and not like it.
Yes,
but they don't know why they don't like. They can't tell you like it's because you did this, right? It's I didn't like it because the character did this, but there's some things that non-writers they like. I just didn't like that movie, and they can't really quantify why they didn't like it. And so like having this discussion now, I can look at this and go, okay, this is something purposely that I can actually apply to my writing and have it affect my work. That's interesting. What is this? All of this convo should do wonders for everyone. Asteroid anthology submissions. Because you're having your open submissions, right? Kayleen for the
Asteroid anthology. Yep.
Yeah. Kayleen, if you have a link for that, put it in the live chat, and we'll get it in the show notes. They're doing I think that's an open call for the new hard sci-fi anthology based around asteroids, I think, and Kayleen's an editor on that project. If you've got the link, put it in there. We're going to continue to read the book over the next week, and then next week we'll come back and dive into a little bit more. One of the books I think we're going to talk about doing after this book is Writing with Emotion, Tension, and Conflict by Cheryl St. John, and that'll be here in a few weeks after we work through
I'm excited for that
arcs. I haven't read it. It's been sitting on my desk. I bought it a couple of months ago. CC KK recommended it to me in our writers group, and I bought it and have not opened it yet. So this will be the next one in the lineup, but we're going to work through character arc a little bit further over the next couple of weeks. And I definitely encourage everyone that's watching the show, either live or listening, just to follow along if you want. Pick up the book on Amazon. It's I don't know why it's $3.69. There's some kind of a weird purchase price on Amazon.
That's odd.
Now. Yeah, I don't know if it's just me or if that's
maybe the publishers.
Are you on the dot? You're on the .us.
Yeah, I'm on .com. It says $3.69.
Huh. Okay.
Even the print's weird. The print is $10.79. So maybe it's just some.
Maybe they hit the suggested price button and just
didn't go back.
Maybe they're a non-US publisher, because all of our prices, unless we intentionally modify them, look super wonky in every place but the US.
You're right.
Kayleen says the email address for all things asteroids is mohs mohsantholologies@gmail.com. mohsantholologies@gmail.com. First 500 words for your story. That's how they're going to weed through the submissions, is to judge your 500 words, and then they'll say, yeah, we like it, keep writing.
All things asteroids, and I think it's hard science fiction, all the science.
Yep. And they've done a couple of shows on that. If you go back and look
Yeah.
at our shows in the library, we had a show with Bill Peterson, and then Kayleen and Lauren had him on the show as well. So if you're interested, go check those shows out, and you can get a lot more information there. Okay, so thanks everybody for participating in this show. Next week we're going to be diving into it again. That's Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Weiland. This show is brought to you by Plottr. The links in the description. If you're interested in checking it out, click on that link. KSM gets a little bit of a fee and helps the show and keep it going. And last week I mentioned we hit 500,000 downloads on our audio podcast, which I think is fantastic. And everybody out there that's listening, thank you guys so much for listening.
Did you say 500,000?
I meant 50,000. I meant 50,000.
I was about to say, wait a minute. We had a huge jump from last week. What happened?
50,000.
50,000.
We'll have to have a party or something when we get to 100,000. We'll just have like a whole stream of just, I don't know, something crazy.
That's a ton of downloads, nowadays, because it's not like somebody just clicked it and liked it. That's something that people spend some time with it. So, I mean, that's hugely flattering that people would be interested.
100%. And if you are listening on the live on the audio feed, we have an audio live show on YouTube every week ish.
We're not real sure what day or anything.
But. It's keeping everybody on their toes. Walt is doing a show. He's been working pretty hard, so I'm not sure when the next Coffee and Concepts is coming on, but he's got a lot of back episodes. It's always fun to sit down with Walt and learn a little bit about. Maybe I should have approached him about.
You should have checked with the resident expert.
Absolutely should have checked with Walt.
My double bra coffee.
Double bra.
You should have checked with the Keystroke Medium Grandmaster of Coffee.
I'm an idiot. I'm telling you guys, I'm not that smart. Check out on Fridays The Writer's Journey with Kayleen and Lauren. James S. Aaron just put up a new Marathon Author on the audio feed. Check that out. Marathon Author is it's basically his writing diary, and it's super fun to listen to him. And then Kayleen Storytime also. I don't know what day she does that. I forgot. I'm a horrible person that keeps.
It depends a little bit on scheduling.
She's been under the weather lately, so
that's true.
Yeah, I think she's kind of backed off that till she feels better. Or something.
Well, Kayleen, feel a whole lot better. That's an order.
Yes.
Everybody else, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us Monday. I'm Josh H. with Chuck Moon and Scott Manley. We're going to come back next week. We're going to have another discussion of creating character arcs, and it's going to get a good time. So come back next week. We're going to have some reading, some writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium.
Later, guys.